Hey guys, I just want to tell you a little bit about my new company, Noxie Herbs, and I'm so thrilled to talk to you about this because I have been working on this for over a year now, and it truly is not just another supplement line. It is a one-of-a-kind modular system designed to help support women at every stage of life, from the teenage years through menopause. So at Noxie Herbs, we have harnessed the power of Chinese medicine to create formulas that are tailored to your unique needs. Whether you're dealing with hormonal changes, menstrual irregularities, or the challenges of menopause, our formulas are crafted to help you find balance and vitality. The best part, our system is modular, meaning that you can customize it to fit your specific health goals. Each formula is designed to work synergistically so you can build a regimen that evolves with you. Go to noxieherbs.com, take the free quiz, find out what we recommend that you take to support your unique hormonal needs, and get going. Let me tell you, this has already changed my life as a 41-year-old woman who is starting to approach perimenopause or maybe in perimenopause. This has totally shifted my cycle and my hormones, and I am so much happier for it. I know you will be too. Feel free to hit me up with any questions and go check it out now. Hey guys, it's Dr. Chloe, and you're listening to the Radical Remedy Podcast. Today's episode is with Dr. Phiona Gitsham. She is an herbalist, an alchemist, a doctor of Chinese medicine, and an astrologist. And most importantly, she's a visionary thought leader who drops so much knowledge and wisdom on this podcast episode about where we are as a society and where we may be headed. I was truly blown away and really fascinated by this conversation. I know you guys are going to love it as much as I do. If you do, please consider sharing with one of your friends. It's the fastest way for us to grow the podcast, and it truly means the world to me. So we can continue to grow and get phenomenal guests so that we can learn together. I hope you all are having a wonderful day and enjoy the ride. All right, everybody, I am super excited and honored today. I have my dear friend, Dr. Phiona Gitsham. She is not only a doctor of Chinese medicine, but she's an entrepreneur. She owns her own herb line. She's an alchemist, an astrologist, and just has such a powerful message for us all today. So I'm so excited to get to pick her brain. Phiona, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
So one of the things that you are so brilliant at, and one of your main missions and courses of study, is the study of alchemy. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about what alchemy is and how you got drawn to that path.
Right. So, I like to study things, and I could get caught up studying forever. And I had just graduated from my Chinese medicine degree in 2006 in Australia. And it was maybe 2007, and I came across some writings about this thing called spagyric alchemy and a bunch of cool symbols that came with it. And I didn't really, it's kind of difficult to access without a human teacher to understand. You know, there's a long tradition of these teachings being intentionally mysteriously written or written partially in code. But I know that, you know, a lot of people think of alchemy maybe as something that involves people poisoning themselves trying to turn lead into gold. And that was, you know, alchemy maybe 800 years ago. But at a key point in time, with a Swiss physician and alchemist called Paracelsus, around, I think it was the 16th century, he really started to use what alchemy had learned from chemistry and from observing nature and natural chemistry to focus on making medicine. And that's what the word spagyric combined with alchemy means, is those alchemical medicines, or medicines made using alchemical methods. And so spagyric alchemy involves the study of learning how to make medicines from the plant kingdom, also from the biological kingdom, like say from animals or eggs, or, you know, even some people, I guess, into sex magic might be making medicines or elixirs from, say, sperm or body fluids, blood, you know, things like that. And then there's also medicines made from the mineral kingdom. And that's definitely the more advanced end of the study, because you need to be able to do it properly to do it non-toxically. But we're at a point now where all the kingdoms have medicines within them that can be made that we now can prove and test, show are non-toxic. And that's through the collaboration of organic chemists becoming alchemists over the past few hundred years, or a couple hundred years, and particularly the past 100 years. So I came across some writings about this in 2007, but I kind of admonished myself, like, no, you just finished a degree, you got to build a clinic, like, don't study again. And so I put it aside, and I didn't really know what I was reading. And then again in 2013, it came up and I was kind of hungry to study something at that point in time. I won't talk too much about astrology in this particular podcast, but for anyone who is into astrology, I have a stellium in Aries with my Mercury and Sun conjunct and my moon, and Uranus was transiting through, and Uranus is like a liberating, innovating, inspiring, mind-charging and consciousness kind of charging experience. And I was really hungry to study something, and spagyric alchemy came again. So there were actually 3 knocks on my door for me to study spagyric alchemy. And in that time, I again rejected it because I was like, no, I'm also studying genomic biochemistry and functional medicine to bring these into my clinical practice. And I keep studying new things, but I've actually got enough. There's more than what I can squeeze into my work in clinic with people. And so, again, then it was 2016, I moved to America, to Colorado. And in 2018 was when there was the 3rd knock from alchemy for me to study. And that's when I started to really study spagyric alchemy. When I moved to Colorado, it was the first time I'd lived somewhere where medical cannabis was legal. And, I was going through immigration. And so there was a period of about a year where I wasn't allowed to work. And I got to really rethink, how do I want to continue my career in Chinese medicine? I had, through combining functional medicine and genomic biochemistry with Chinese medicine, I had started to attract and be working with people with some quite serious illnesses like cancer, autoimmune disease, mental health issues. And there was often a genetic component to what was going on. And then also because I was working with methylation and the MTHFR gene and that sort of family of methylation and detoxification genes, then you start to get people with autism and a lot of neurodivergence as well coming through with that kind of specialty. And I myself am neurodivergent, a little odd. No, not odd. I'm not odd. Well,
welcome to the club, my dear.
I have a hungry mind, a hungry, innovative mind.
Yeah.
So where was I? So basically I started to, because I had a lot of cancer patients and I was in a place where medical cannabis was available, and there'd been all this research since the legalization of cannabis brings with it a lot of really great medical research on what this plant can do, which had previously been shunned or dismissed or not funded to really develop as research. By 2016 in Colorado, there was quite a lot of legitimate medical research on cannabis, and I had cancer patients and people constantly asking me as well. So I started to learn about that. And then I got to go to my first, dispensary and have a look. And so I said, hey, I'm a doctor and I work with natural medicine and cancer patients. And can I see all your medical cannabis products? And of course, I'm looking at them and reading the ingredients. And just a little bit of background, I am allergic and highly sensitive to a lot of chemicals and a lot of things that are normal foods for people. And I have always had to learn how to read labels. And so at this point, I'm like an expert label reader, and I'm in the cannabis dispensary and I'm reading these THC medical cannabis products, and I'm not seeing any that I could honestly feel good about recommending to a cancer patient because of some of the ingredients. And that was not usually the cannabis ingredient. although I wanted to know if it was organic and were there pesticide residues and things like that. But there would also be highly processed refined sugars in there. And there would be sometimes colors and other chemicals that really these things could be made better. And so, a little bit more background. I'd been playing around since during so I started Chinese medicine in 2001. And while I was going through that degree, the part-time job I did to support myself and pay for school was I was being a chef for a lot of it. And I worked with a lot of plant-based kind of chefing approach. So it was quite healthy food and vegan restaurants and things like that. And I had also started playing around with learning how to make my own body care because I had eczema and skin conditions that would come or erupt easily if I bought some moisturizer that had an ingredient that I was sensitive to. So I had this sort of percolating knowledge that I hadn't really formally developed, but of learning how to make body care and being a chef and being a herbalist and being a nutritionist and being a label reader and just building this knowledge around, what makes a good product and how can we make these products and how can we make them better and how can we make them without containing all these problematic ingredients, which my body is a radar for, or like a very sensitive barometer to. So I kind of had this realization also because I had been experiencing clinical burnout a few times because I'm very sensitive and working with a lot of people with serious illness, moving to a new country, figuring out how to resume a new clinical business and finding myself not fully enthusiastic about building a clinic because of that burnout, but absolutely obsessed with all the things I was learning in the medicine and all these things I could do. And so I kind of had this realization that was like, hang on, I'm so critical, I pick up a label and I read it and I'm like, well, that sucks and that ingredient's no good and I could do better. And so I just thought, why don't I do better? That's probably why I'm here. And it was a really good point for me, in terms of figuring out your purpose and why you're here and what you're here to do. And for me, it was really also connected to embracing what may be one of my worst traits, like being critical. There's a purpose in that. And, I have high standards for a reason, and this could help a lot of other people like me and a lot of other people who aren't like me, but also need to have higher quality in their products and their whether it's edible or medicinal, internal or topical for the body or body care. A lot of these things need overhauls. So I started to look around at ways in which I could start to do that. And at first I kind of pitched myself with a few medical cannabis companies, and I realized that I was pretty much going to be underpaid and suppressed in terms of what I was truly capable of doing. So after a bit of messing around, by 2018, I had made, from around 2014 in the acupuncture clinic in Melbourne, Australia, I had started making some balms. Like at the moment, I have the Rapid Pain Relief Balm, the Resolved Amp Balm, and the Young Chi Adrenal Herb Balm. They were all things that I started making in 2014 in Australia. There's been a couple of modifications and improvements in the ingredients, but I would even say quite a large chunk of that recipe is based on the original. I first made them in coconut oil butter, and because that melts easily now, I use other butters, but similar. And there's more Chinese herbs in them now because when I first started, I was using essential oils that were available. So now it's half that and half extracts with Chinese herbs. But so by 2018, I was conceiving of bioherbology and doing these Chinese herbal medicine products, both internal and body care and topical, that were more medicinal. So there's everything from moisturizer through to something for your hemorrhoids, through to a tincture that you can take for something. And during the conception of the business in 2018 was when I received my third knock from Spagyric Alchemy. Came back into my life with reading some stuff. I started an Instagram account because I thought I'm going to need to finally get onto Instagram. And I loaded a video early on of this batch of Australian cordyceps mushrooms that someone had given me, a botanist that I knew. And this batch I was given was in 2016, just before I left Australia. And I'd been given this amazing batch of Australian cordyceps. It's called Cordyceps gunni, Gunii. And, they're a fungus that grows from, and they parasite some kind of insect to grow. And so there's like a caterpillar in Australia, like some kind of worm caterpillar grub thing. I don't know exactly. I don't know what it is. And so they're a little unique from the Chinese cordyceps medicinal mushroom. And I'm, in my unique special sensitivity to everything, I'm actually allergic to all mushrooms. So I was given this big batch to someone, because I had a dehydrator because I'm a food nerd, and I dehydrated them, and we decided we were going to use them in the acupuncture clinic. And there had been one piece of research done, like an assay test on them to compare their potency and compared to Chinese medicinal cordyceps. And they turn out to be like really medicinal and quite an equivalent. So I had this batch, and I had made a video of the process that I'd done. And then 2 years later, I'm starting my Instagram in 2018, and I uploaded it. And I'd seen a bunch, for some reason, the algorithm right off the get-go just gave me alchemy accounts.
Yeah.
And so I had this interaction with an alchemist who was like, oh, what are you going to do with those mushrooms? And I was like, well, this was a couple of years ago, and I just dehydrated them. And they were like, oh, interesting. So we started having a chat, and this person now is like one of my teachers of alchemy.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's kind of this fateful uploading of medicinal mushrooms and meeting with alchemy. So then I was developing the business, and I spoke to this person. I opened the doors in January 2019 for selling products, and I had the first 8 products then. Now there's 21. So I had a conversation with someone, with this alchemist, to say, hey, can you tell me about Spagyric Alchemy? Like, why is it better? And we had a 3 or 4 hour conversation. And I was like, wow, damn, that's amazing. So from there on in, I started having private lessons with this person, but also hiring them to do some extracts for me so I could experiment and see, like, would I use these in my products? And we go from there.
I love it. I love your products. I genuinely, I was telling you before, I really don't have anybody on the podcast whose products I do not stand behind wholeheartedly. And I don't use many products but my own. So there's a handful of people. So if you're listening, Beam Minerals, Wizard Sciences, True Kaba, Bioherbology, only products that have been on my podcast. And that's very, very intentional. And we'll get into some of those a little bit later. I would love to hear what you, and I agree with you on so many of the things and went through so much of that also in terms of my stubbornness, in terms of the quality of the products that people were putting out, especially in the hemp and cannabis world, are just so poor and so filled with chemicals, and just sort of that stubbornness of, well, somebody's got to do it. Nobody's doing it. I guess I have to do it. So I love that you took that and you built such a beautiful line to help so many people. I would love to hear more about that 3 to 4 hour initial conversation that sold you on Spagyrics. What was it that you learned in that? What is it that you love so much about specifically the Spagyric extraction techniques, and why do you think that it's so special in terms of getting the medicinal qualities out of the herbs and making it such powerful products from it?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for including me in your approved products list. I know what that's like. And also congrats to you too for deciding to make the products that should exist. You know, I think that's such a great calling for anyone that's listening, whether you're an artist or like beyond making medicine or making products, whatever it is you want to do in this world, it really could be the thing that you wish existed. Like then one that can bring that through. And I think that kind of passion work is really usually leads to success as well.
Yeah.
And so I want to mention at this point, this teacher is Daniel Wiseman from Secret Fire Apothecary. He's really brilliant and a great herbalist and a great spagyric alchemist. And so I will describe the difference between a standard tincture and a spagyric tincture, and that should give basically the groundwork for where we're headed here.
Perfect.
I want to talk about a message that I would have basically as a person to the planet, to anyone, to everyone, and why I'm doing what I'm doing in like the big picture way. And that is because I think we are a species in crisis in so many ways, and alchemy has some beautiful inner philosophy and guidance for what we're going through. What is the process? What is the process that nature uses to transform everything and to evolve it into a higher state? And that's something that we really need to do as a species. Like we're in crisis in terms of our health, our medical systems, the food that we've been talking about, food and body care and household products that are just really toxic. Some not even food anymore, the environment and our not being in right relationship with the environment, the climate crisis, and the fact that whether it's caused by humans or not, we're actually not preparing to face it. We're not coming together very effectively to be resilient in the face of it. You know, there's still so much people either denying it or arguing about what causes it. We're at the point like, who cares what caused it? If it's us or whatever, there's something the whole solar system is going through. Maybe it's a bit of both, but we actually could be collaborating with our greatest minds to be able to deal with it. And instead we have, you know, some billionaires with bunkers that you and I weren't invited to.
No, definitely did not get that invite.
So I didn't know if I want to be down there with them, you know, because one of the other problems of us being in crisis is that we have issues with sex, in sexuality and fertility, and our leadership, colonization, that we're being divided instead of being able to come together effectively and to evolve positively as a beautiful species. You know, so I think we have a big problem with leadership where we as a species, and I'm going to come back to how to make a spagyric tincture, but
No, I love this. I think it's so important.
all part of the weave is that, you know, we even have research now that shows that people with cluster B personalities, which comprises of narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths, will concentrate themselves in positions of power. You know, so say that they make up, you know, and it's debated, like maybe psychopaths are 2% of the population and maybe narcissists are 10% of the population. And I know some people would say more for narcissism now, but like it's a spectrum. But in the research will show that 20 to 30% of CEOs and people in high management or government leadership positions exhibit traits of being the cluster B personalities. Like narcissists are the least of the problem, and then there's sociopaths and psychopaths. And we're really seeing the pain of that, especially over the past year as well, in some, you know, live streamed brutalities and people responding on a new level to an ancient problem of having people in power who actually don't really care about us. in the right way, don't really care about the environment and us having a good relationship in the right way. It's a very dominator culture. For the past 10 years, a lot of people have been obsessed with learning about narcissists. What's a narcissist? Oh my God, I dated one. Or, oh my God, there's one in my family, or my boss was one, or, and it really, really ruined me. And I think that we're looking at, I look at what's the development of this. So if we look at genetic evolution, the genome evolves, species evolve, nature evolves due to pressures and requirements for survival within the environment, right? And so coming back to the personal level, people being obsessed with learning about narcissism and how to identify narcissist and how to handle a narcissist. And I'm looking at, well, where's this going? And I think that once we learn about them in our personal realm, we then look at what's the next level is to actually really understand the epic problem that we have with the wrong people in government, the wrong people in leadership at high levels. And I know, a lot of people are thinking now, well, it's not even the government in charge. They're just puppets, and behind them is the mega corporations and the banking families. And yes, all of that, right? So whether or not they're alien species, or whether or not they're, whatever they are, they don't care about us. There's narcissism, there's sociopathy, there's psychopathy concentrated in those levels of leadership. And the effect is that we're being divided and stagnated in our ability to evolve and improve in who we are and what we're doing here on the planet, in our right relationship with the planet. And, I think about this a lot. It's disturbing. It's very disturbing. And that's why we're all in crisis, where this is a trauma.
Yeah.
This is a mass trauma. There's a mass psychosis. There's mass gaslighting. And, if we find ourselves looking at, for example, the two options for the United States in the elections, and, this is similar to other countries as well, but particularly like a horrific caricature in America.
Mm-hmm.
There's people constantly gaslighting and negotiating with themselves about feeling good about picking the lesser of two evils. And, just to be awake to that and to not fully believe the gaslight, that these are good choices, that this is what we can accept in our leadership, because it's always been like that. We can't do any better. It's the way of the world. What can we do about it? And so to bring that back to alchemy, nature evolves everything. And I know what I'm saying is the world is messed up, but there is a message of hope in here as well, and a message of understanding the alchemical process that we're all undergoing, and how it could possibly lead to evolution, how it could possibly lead to us not being like this forever. Because that's the biggest gaslight, really, is it's always been this way. There's nothing you can do about it. Just tend to your own little life and try and get a nicer car and a nicer home.
Keep watching MSNBC and everything will be fine.
Need 3 jobs to survive. You might be able to go on holidays. And it's terrible. It's really terrible. So alchemy blows me away and is amazing, because it is the way of nature, because everything is recycled, nothing is wasted, everything is transformed, and everything is evolved. So let's take, for example, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the mineral kingdom. We tend to think of these as being quite separate and different from each other and not necessarily interchangeable, like you can't turn a plant into gold. But if we understand the components and break it down and understand that nature's working with chemistry and also the atomic level of things and the spirit of things, everything dies and is reborn and is transformed. And so as a human being, an animal, there's metal kingdom in my body. There's iron in my blood. I outsource to plants to get a lot of my nutrients. I can't do photosynthesis, but they can, and then I eat them. And I need that to survive. So I'm doing photosynthesis, but I'm outsourcing it. And, yay for chlorophyll. But yeah, I love green things. They just really work for my body. But so there is this constant process, and the alchemists over thousands of years, alchemy doesn't come from one part of the earth, or from one region of the earth, or from one cultural peoples or religion. It's kind of worked its way through everywhere, and has developed through drawing in and collaborating in right relationship with the best of what every culture that alchemy's passed through has brought into it, So we can go back and say, well, maybe alchemy started with the Egyptians, but there is a lot of evidence that the ancient Chinese were doing alchemy too. And so we can say, alchemy wove through Egypt, and then, surely that knowledge came from somewhere. They were distilling essential oils back before Jesus' time, but where did that idea come from? Where did that come from? And it goes back thousands of years. There were, I think it was, I'm going to get the timing wrong, but maybe 10,000 BC, we have evidence of mushroom worshipping goddess cults where the psilocybin mushrooms were stored in honey. We were talking about this earlier, I think.
I want to join a mushroom, what did you call it? A mushroom worshipping goddess cult? That sounds, I'll sign up for that. Let's do that.
That's a club. And so there are, we've been eating, the fact that we've been eating and cooking, we've been performing this transformative interaction with nature. And then when we came into the Metal Age, the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, we started to transform metals and things like that. So, then we have some evidence of, like a water bath, a bain-marie, which is like, say, a bowl over a saucepan of water that's steaming where you can melt chocolate without burning it because the water bath provides a more steady, less severe temperature. This method we know was developed by Maria the prophetessa from ancient Egypt 2,000 years ago. And she's recorded as perhaps the first alchemist. She's not like the first known alchemist, but the first recorded alchemist was a woman. And there's even extraction equipment, like steam distillation equipment, that the modern version of is the soxhlet. It got named after Franz Soxhlet from the 17th century, probably because he's a dude, so he invented it. But she made the prototype 2,000 years ago. And so then after Egypt, around 2,000 years ago, we have a lot of written documentation of alchemy working its way through the Arabic world and then the Islamic world. And there are some incredible Islamic and Arabic philosophers and alchemists who worked and really developed the knowledge of working with metals. And then alchemy made its way into Europe, and it was like banned in like the 13th century because there were so many people making fake money, making fake coin that looked like gold but didn't actually contain that much gold. They could fake it. They were good enough to fake it. So alchemy got banned, and it got a bad name, and we still kind of have that image of it today, that it's some dude from 800 years ago poisoning themselves trying to make gold. But then we get to Paracelsus in the 1600s, a Swiss physician and alchemist who brought in the word spagyric, which basically means to make medicine with alchemy, and started looking at combining herbal medicine with the methods of alchemy to extract the herbs and make medicines. But they were also working with minerals and salts and egg. Like you can make oil of egg, and it's an incredible vitamin B12 supplement. So from there, spagyrics developed, and at that time, herbal medicine, an early stage of modern chemistry and pharmacology. I mean, Paracelsus is also considered the father of pharmacology. They hadn't yet divided, but then after that, they started to divide. And we can say definitely because of impure people in positions of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the split of consciousness from spirit into and matter, and people just taking science down this path of only trusting matter, and also burning all the witches at the stake so that men could have the power in medicine, which was traditionally a lot of women. And, you know, these are all subtopics we could talk about for an hour and a half, so I'm trying to stay on point that
I love it.
Now, you know, 400 or 500 years after Paracelsus, now we're at a point where chemistry is quite, and pharmacology is quite separate from herbal medicine. But spagyric alchemy is actually this beautiful kind of healer of the wholeness that the potential of the wholeness that can be there. So now I'll talk about the difference between a standard tincture and a spagyric tincture. To start to demonstrate some of this, what's different. So when you make a tincture, and I think a lot of your listeners will know this, I mean, everyone in Vermont makes their own tinctures all the time. Everyone's a home herbalist here. But for those who may have never made their own tincture, you'll have a jar that you can seal. Doesn't have to be a jar, but let's say it's a jar because it's your first tincture, glass jar. And you put in some alcohol, and you could be anywhere between 40% alcohol vodka or 95% grain alcohol pure. And then you put in your herbs, and you have enough alcohol to cover the herbs. And you shake it, and you will have crushed or macerated the herbs a little bit, you know, to get them to open and reveal and give of themselves to the alcohol. The alcohol is a solvent, it's extracting them, and they're giving up their goods. And so this is the first stage where basically we've pulled the plant out of the soil, we've killed it. And now we're pulling it apart and like, give up your goods. You know, we're taking everything out of it. We've killed it. It's a destructive process. And when you say you let your tincture sit in the dark for 8 weeks and you give it a shake every day, and then you filter and press out the herbs, and then you'll have a standard tincture with that liquid, and it's condensed with all the medicine in the herbs, the plant, and you take a certain amount each day, and it gives you the medicinal properties of the plant. So that would be a standard tincture. The difference with a spagyric tincture is at this point, once you've pressed the herbs and separated that it's called herbal mark, from the liquid extract, and you can extract, it doesn't have to be alcohol, you can extract into honey. So people extract into vegetable glycerin, which is not my favorite because it's not very potent to extract. It's not a very good solvent. But anyway, whatever you've extracted into, the best is alcohol on a natural level. And also alcohol is made from plants. So side discussion there. We use plants to make a solvent to extract our plants. And then you take that pressed herbal mark, and you can, so with a standard tincture, that would be probably thrown into the compost at that point and considered that we got everything out of it. Say where you're extracting leaves, they would be more pale compared to when you first put them into the tincture, you know, and you would say, hey, I got my stuff out. Like the alcohol went from clear to green, the plant went from dark green to pale, and I got my stuff out. But there's still more in there. And this is the magic of the spagyric process. What is in there that hasn't been drawn out by the solvent is the mineral salts. So now we're talking about the mineral kingdom, not just the plant kingdom. Electrolytes, like potassium, magnesium, salts that are in your body. And so the only way to get them out of that plant is to burn it completely, calcinate it, set it on fire, burn it down to a pure white ash. So again, another destructive process. We've killed the thing, we've pulled it apart, it's as divisive as possible, where, you know, now we're going to set it on fire. sorry, we haven't hurt you enough. We're going to purify you by fire. And so when you burn a plant, and sometimes, like if I'm doing a big batch of Chinese herbs, of a whole Chinese formula with solid roots in there, and even though they've been ground down to have more surface area for extraction, the calcination process can take anywhere from 3 days for some very leafy herbs through to 10 days if you're dealing with a lot of roots, you know? And so burning all day at high temperatures until you get a pure white ash. You know, so most of us have seen a fire go down to the stage of coals or grey ash. If you keep burning and sort of stirring it every hour and you keep the temperature at the right level and everything, you will end up with quite a pure white ash. And then that ash goes through a process of being washed and filtered. And then the salts that have survived the ash are there with carbon, which is the ash. The salts will then dissolve into water. So that's why we wash the ash and then we have this water, and it should be crystal clear, right? If it's not crystal clear, we didn't burn thoroughly enough. That can be a real bummer because then you have to start again. It's really hard to burn wet ash. So, you know, anyway, these are the things you learn. These are the types of things alchemy teach you. This is why you would need a teacher to do this. So then those mineral salts, the mineral kingdom from within the plant kingdom, are now in water, and then you can evaporate the water and it grows these beautiful crystals. And I love this part. People who follow my social media on Instagram or Facebook, and I'm trying to build a TikTok, but it's noisy in there. Those are some of my favorite pictures, the crystal salts. And what's beautiful and interesting to me is that there are said to be 7 different pattern formations that the crystal salts will make when they grow. I haven't measured and tested if I've only seen 7, but I don't think I've seen any more than 7. I did a special tincture of Jishuetang, a Chinese herb that if you look at the cross-section of the root, it has this radial pattern, like a starburst, you know, from the center radial points coming out, you know. And when I grew the crystal salts, it grew this kind of radial starburst pattern of little quartzes. And I was like, wow, it looks like the skeleton of the plant. And you know, our skeleton is made from the minerals.
Yeah.
So it is literally, it will reform itself almost in the mineral matrix of that plant. You know, lavender forms long, thin spikes. The astragalus that I have in a number of my products, the interior stargalus liquid extract is not just a tincture, it's a first order plant stone, which is a more complicated process than what I'm discussing here with this spagyric tincture. But it's also in the nonlinear serum as a topical. The astragalus forms little diamonds. You know, so there's these different shapes that these mineral salts form. And I'm just drawing the link for people as well that do Chinese medicine where we talk about, you know, the minerals in the bones. And this is like the bones, the skeleton of the plant. And so once you have the crystals that are then, you know, everything's purified, honestly, what's left from that ash that you burned is like maybe like a teaspoon of ash that you're going to not use. And this is one of the ways in which there's no waste in nature. Nothing's wasted. Every process is evolved and transformed into something else. And then you've got these beautiful crystals. And if you put those salt crystals into the tincture, a chemical reaction occurs. And the actual components of the electrolyte ratios in the crystal salts will vary according to what it is you've calcinated. So you can't just like cheat and throw in some, I mean, you could. I know some people think that way, but that's definitely not what I do. Like if you are doing a plant that grows underwater like a seaweed, there's going to be a much higher sodium component than if you're doing a plant that grows on the land, which is going to have potassium. Yeah. And they taste differently as well. So anyway, so once you put the salts to the tincture, this cool thing happens, which I have some videos and images of, and I'm sure you've seen images from your people that extract, where the salts kind of start to bounce around off the tincture, and they what's in the tincture, if we say what's the medicine on a chemistry level that the tincture has extracted from the plant, which is all the actives other than the salts, the mineral salts. It's carboxylic acids. There's some volatile oils, which if you steam distill the plant first, then to get the essential oil off, that's the volatile oils. The alcohol will have pulled out, those as well, some of those. And so the carboxylic acids interact with the salts, and there's this chemical reaction that occurs. In alchemy, this is called the alchemical marriage, right? So we've killed the plant, we've pulled apart all of its pieces and separated them. They can't even be together anymore. Some are in the tincture, some are in the salts, and then we finally reunite them. And the salts are said to be the body, and the alcohol is the spirit, and the sulfur, which is the volatile oils and things that we mentioned, that's the soul. And so you're finally putting the tria prima, the three things that is contained in everything on the planet, back together. After all that destruction, you pull it apart, you put them back together. There's a reaction, they get married. And in that reaction, this is what sets apart a spagyric tincture from a traditional or standard tincture, is that the medicinal components evolve and new molecules form that weren't previously there. And this is the wonder of the work that the amazing alchemists who are organic chemists, like these people, these teachers, have organic chemistry degrees and have done 40, 50 years worth of lab testing now. So we're at this wonderful time in spagyric alchemy where we're saying, hey, look, there's molecules there that weren't previously there, and they're medicinal and they're non-toxic. And this is now an evolved tincture compared to tincture, right? So now we're talking about evolution and nature doing alchemy and evolving things to a higher level. And as a medicine, it's not just that there is this chemical extra medicine within there from that reaction, but also the presence of the electrolytes make it more bioavailable for our body to absorb, and also suspend the actives within the formula, within the liquid. They go into a different state of suspension that makes this like a prodrug, and that can have less reactions to the body, because when something is a prodrug, your body, like your liver's role in the metabolism and the absorption of it, it's kind of like we can choose to metabolize this in your body. We can take what we need from this. And so there tends to be less reactions. For example, I'm allergic to all mushrooms, but I can take a spagyric tincture of mushrooms.
Oh, wow.
Because it doesn't have the proteins and some of the sugars, and they're probably the part I'm reacting to. And I don't know, for whatever reason, it's in prodrug form. And I have had reactions from a standard tincture of reishi. Like mushrooms are so prevalent here in Vermont. It's a mycology heaven.
Yeah.
Everybody's going and collecting turkey tail and reishi and ensuring them like it's growing on the tree in my backyard. And I don't process them because I can't be around them, especially when they're releasing their spores and things. There's no mushrooms on my home planet, I guess. But I can have a spagyric tincture of medicinal mushrooms.
That's amazing. For me, I know the power of spagyrics because I've used them for years. And I also know as a business owner that I pay 6 times as much as other people do for similar products because, like you, we get our herbs raw and they're hand extracted and beautifully done through this incredible alchemical process, which makes them so much more bioavailable and so much more effective. I love extrapolating out sort of what you were talking about breaking apart the different pieces of the plant and bringing it together to create something that wasn't there before. Like the whole is greater than the parts. And I think a lot of the message that you're bringing today is this idea that as our government and corporations and all of these entities are dividing us further and further and further, ideally, hopefully, we can start to come together and create something much more powerful than we are separate. Is that sort of what you're seeing in this tie together?
I wanted to take a moment and talk to you about Radical Roots. So I founded this company when my son Remy was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder and intractable epilepsy. As a doctor of Chinese medicine, I knew that the best way to support his complex neurological and physiological needs would be through dynamic Chinese herbal formulas. I also started studying the incredible effects of hemp and its ability to support and regulate the brain and the body. By combining targeted Chinese herbal formulas with complete spectrum hemp and using a unique alchemical spagyric extraction technique, we have created formulas that are true game changers. Honestly, I truly believe that these are some of the most powerful herbal formulas on the market. Please check out radicalrootsherbs.com, use the code RADREMEDY, and get 15% off your first order. I'm so proud of these, and I think you guys are going to love them as much as I do.
Through realizing like our peak problem of psychopaths in power, we have to go to the next level in our ability to start to form little alchemical marriages amongst us. Like how nourishing is it when you find people that are your people, your soul tribe, like-minded people that are working on things, people that are building the new world. We literally do need to build a new world, a new system, a new structure. So to finish the analogy and the metaphor and also the chemistry of the lab work, the ancient Egyptians would describe this process of, when I said you have the soul in the oils, the spirit in the alcohol and some of the carboxylic acids that are drawn into it, like we call alcohol spirits. That comes from this alchemical philosophy. We still call them spirits, and the salt is the body. And so when we've killed this plant, we've extracted it and pulled all the pieces apart, and then we put the salt in, the alchemical marriage happens, the reaction happens, and it evolves into a new form. That's the moment when we're like, this is the Egyptian language, is that it's reanimated into a new body. What was dead is reanimated into a new body, a new higher frequency of what it was. This is a reincarnation, rebirth. And, if I mention a little bit of astrology, the USA is going through its Pluto return. Pluto is god of the underworld. It's the death rebirth process. It's the guarantee of death and destruction, which also guarantees rebirth. When in Chinese medicine, when we die, we have this 5-element understanding of our body and where do the parts go. So there's the water and fire axis, the vertical axis, which is the kidneys, bladder, and the heart, and pericardium, sanjiao, and small intestine. And so this vertical axis of water and fire, the two primary, if we look at the universe, is one. And then when things split into two, the first two categories we have is fire and water, or yin and yang. And then we split into 3 categories and 5 categories, and then we get the 10,000 things. So we have the elements there in the first few categories. And so it is said that when we die, our core part of our spirit or our soul of like this, some kind of incorruptible part of our being that's eternal, will leave the body and leave the earth plane. It becomes non-physical, or it was non-physical inhabiting, like we are a soul in a body, right? And so then they separate. And so that part becomes then not embodied. And then we have the wood, earth, and metal elements, which are considered the horizontal axis, which then are said to basically disintegrate and decompose as the body decomposes and go back into the earth. And all those components are recycled. Where does the iron that was in my blood go? Where do all those components go back into their raw elements that iron might end up in a stone or a crystal or another biological animal or in a plant. Who knows? But the point is that nature contains the knowledge and is the unfolding knowledge of everything continuously transforming in and out of each other's forms. And there's no invisible barrier between the plant, animal, and mineral kingdoms with this. So as Pluto rules this process, and USA is going through its Pluto return, a Pluto return astrologically is something that happens every 248 years. It's not something that a human tends to live through. I haven't met one, maybe I...
Not yet.
Anyway, I remember my last Pluto return. It all goes into all the things I'm remembering in this life, right? So we can look back through other countries and nations and see what happened to them during the Pluto return. So just so you know, a nation can have a chart. How the hell do we know when a nation was born? One piece of land can have multiple birth moments, and they would be when a country is formed and signed into happening. So we're talking about 1776 was when the USA was signed into being in its current structure, current form, current system.
Yeah.
Right? And of course it existed before that, and, you know, First Nations people have been here and it's their land. And I just want to acknowledge that while I'm talking about this. But in terms of the astrological forecasting of seeing these patterns that go through things that we create, things that we manifest as this United States, typically when a nation or an empire, we've had empires as well, go through Pluto returns, it's either the great downfall or huge expansion of an empire. So the fall of Rome was a Pluto return. The end of the, we can track England has been through a number of Pluto returns. There are astrologers who've done videos on this, so I don't get distracted, but just, take my word on it, that it's either the great downfall or the great expansion. And I can see USA are working pretty hard towards both right now. Who knows? I don't know which way it will go, but during the at least a decade before, and it takes around about 15 years after the peak of a Pluto return for the actual collapse to happen, if that's where it's headed. So the USA Pluto return peaked. There's a couple of different dates given, but it was I think it was February 2022 or 2023. So we're just over the mid-hump. But because Pluto, it works within 10-degree orbit, moves really slowly, we're in it. We're in the midst of it. We've just passed the midpoint. And for at least 10, 15 years before, there is great unrest. There is huge amounts of gaslighting and corruption and propaganda from the leadership. There is massive loss of trust between the people and their governments. There is kind of like a mass psychosis. Right? Yeah. Just going to leave that one hanging. And then, within 10, 15 years after it, the nation is usually had quite a deep and comprehensive structural change, either to survive or because it collapsed, or collapsed and was reborn in another way. So we're talking about major revolutions.
Yeah.
And we also have where we've been teetering on and coming into astrological cycle returns that repeat civil war cycles in the United States. We're also repeating Saturn and Jupiter cycles that relate to World War I and World War II. And so I'm not going to go into what's going on, because I know everybody knows what's going on the planet. But we are at this point where the pressure from our environment is demanding that we change. And if we look at humans and genomics and health and fertility, massive decline in fertility, we've introduced thousands of chemicals into our foods and our body care and our household chemicals and our construction chemicals and our environment since World War II. And we sort of started that around World War I as well, and with the Industrial Revolution before that. And so we're seeing more genetic polymorphisms and health issues from those arise, but we're also seeing some, nature doesn't always fail with a genetic polymorphism. It will maybe throw out a lot of different variants, and some of them will succeed and make that species more adaptable to survive, and some of them will be more sensitive and have more illness or problems. So we hear stories of there are people who are somehow genetically kind of immune to preservatives and stuff. And then there are people like me that are super sensitive to everything and neurodivergent. So this brings me into the neurodivergence piece and the dream diviner and the lucid dreaming tincture.
I'm dying to hear more about this tincture.
So I'm going further with this, but I just wanted to, for now, just center on that message that hopefully we are beginning to start our alchemical marriage because we've been torn apart.
Yeah.
And it's our way forward. And I think we also have to come together and deal with and really become conscious that we're not just dealing with not learning how to not date narcissists or learning how to handle that narcissist in your family, but we actually need to start to handle this massive problem with we're not protecting the pathways to power. And we need to change so much to be able to protect the pathways to power and to elevate people who actually have leadership skills. If you're some kid and you're at leadership camp, you're learning that a leader brings out the best in everyone and creates something better than the whole and better than the separate parts, and can evolve and make things better. And that's the opposite of our actual circumstances here on the planet as a species. So
I would just like to say that you did such a beautiful job of articulating all of that. It's such a complex topic and so challenging and nuanced. And I love how you were able to bring out all of the challenges and the truth and where we sit as a society right now, and also bring it together with the message of hope and with the wisdom of alchemy and astrology, so that we're all able to see, clearly what's happening, but also the potential for what might be in the future if we actually do come together to start to build a better world. So I'm very impressed with how beautifully you were able to articulate all of that. So I just wanted to interject that before we move on to the Dreamweaver. But I loved it. I was sitting here riveted the whole time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I was wondering how I was going to just let it all tumble out and be cohesive, because I couldn't figure out the actual what's the linear sequence of this, but we'll keep going because the dream diviner is relevant. So people might be saying, you can say that we need to get our shit together. I think also that the climate crisis will actually make it a life or death requirement. It's already being, there's going to be huge mass migrations. At the moment, people are being slaughtered for resources in the land. And what if in 10 years that land's uninhabitable? Okay. And there are millions of people mass migrating to live somewhere else. This is how myopic we're being. Because this is the reality that we are gaslit to turn away from, and perhaps so traumatized and overwhelmed by that we're compartmentalizing and not actually facing with courage and proper leadership and love and unity and come on, we can do this together, So one thing, I don't have all the answers to this, to how we're going to get there, but I know from my own personal journey that, and from also studying several cultures that have a lucid dreaming practice, is that the ability to become lucid within a dream is deeply, deeply connected to our protection from being mind controlled, to our ability to stay present and our ability to wake up to our circumstances and see clearly. And I think that's so important. And so to try and summarize that, this is again another big discussion, but I have had lucid and sometimes precognitive dreams since I was born. And so I was always fascinated with this. And it took me a while to realize that not everybody was dreaming the future or knowing that they were dreaming while they were dreaming. And so by the time I was a teenager, I was quite fascinated with this. And I was also really fascinated with shamanism. And I apprenticed for 5 years with a First Nations shaman who was also a medical doctor in Australia. He's from Delaware Cherokee, but he has family in Australia and was living there. And I was so fortunate at the age of 21 to be handed his phone number, and I called him up and was completely unprepared. I was like, so I'm calling you because you're a shaman. Deep voice, American voice, kind of cracked up laughing. It was like, how you doing there, little sis? You better come over. And I was, wow. And this was not a shaman involved in entheogens. This was literally just learning a new relationship to nature, learning how to heal, learning herbs, learning nutrition, learning love, learning energy healing, Reiki, learning the principles of Huna. He was Delaware Cherokee, but had spent a lot of time with Hawaiian Huna shamans and done kind of a knowledge swap. And so I got this kind of hybrid teachings from him. And he was the first Native American to graduate from UCLA Medical School of Respiratory Physiology in the 60s, and used to work with children with asthma, and ended up himself choosing to go back to natural medicine and shamanic healing because, the medicine at the times for asthma was like steroids, and he was brought up as the medicine man. He was like, well, I know what's going on here. Something's suffocating this kid's spirit. They can't breathe. And often he would say often maybe it was the parents. So, that was awkward. So he left Western medicine after, I think, a couple decades. So I was very lucky to meet this person and, kind of become part of that family of people who could learn from him. And I was young and I was allergic to everything, and I hadn't really comprehended what traumas I'd picked up in childhood that were part of what was going on in my body and my mind and my spirit. But I was having these crazy psychic lucid dreams pretty often, and I was really fascinated. So I started there. And I also learned a lot from the Maya, from Nagualism. They're really into lucid dreaming, and Tibetan Dzogchen dream yoga. And at some point across my journey, I came across the South African tribe. So it's pronounced Xhosa. It's one of those clicking languages, but it's spelled Xhosa. And I cannot speak their language, so I'm not going to pretend or try. But they have a beautiful plant that turns out to be my number one plant ally in terms of this lucid dreaming realm and practice. And this plant is Silene capensis, which is my new product called Dream Diviner. And I've worked with it since 2007, and I've been through a traditional initiation with it. And it's only now something that I'm making available as a spagyric tincture because of dreams I've had guiding me to do it, which is part of the tradition for how to work with Silene capensis. Even if you know where it's growing, you're not meant to go and just pick it. You're meant to ask for a dream. Is this plant meant to be given? Like a dream diviner dreamed whether or not I was to be initiated. And they got the instructions to initiate me in where to pick the plant from. And then that was sent to me with instructions and a ritual. And then after years of working with it, it was something I wasn't originally going to make available. But through this message that I deeply feel and is the biggest thing, I think, going on the planet, and my role in making medicines, I've been guided to now make this available as a lucid dream tincture to help people awaken to the dream and to the nightmare as well. And so to talk a little bit about that and the meaning of that, we're going to talk a bit about endogenous DMT and neurodivergence as well. But just briefly, the Tibetan pre-sleep prayer, if you're practicing Dzogchen dream yoga, is, may I awaken in the dream so that all beings may awaken. And this is the core intent of lucid dreaming. We don't practice lucid dreaming to have control over our dreams. Like everything that you're dreaming or meditating or visualizing, a lucid dream is like an enhanced version of visualization. So say you're an athlete, you're visualizing being able to do your thing better. Or say you're visualizing anything that you want to improve on. We have a lot of research to show that that works because you're building the neural pathways in your brain that then translate into that ability. And so whatever you're focusing on in your meditations or your lucid dreams, you're building neural pathways. So if your focus and your goal is to have control over the dream environment and simply live out fantasies, this is a fairly shallow goal and it will only cultivate the controlling nature that is within you. And I would suggest don't do that. The purpose is to simply realize that you're in a dream, you're in an illusion, and wake up to that. And what makes it really difficult, what will then either sink you back into dreaming unconsciously or will wake you up altogether, is grasping or aversion, fear or desire. Either you're so afraid of what's going on in the dream, you wake yourself up, but you're like, oh, thank God, that monster didn't eat me. Or you're so desirous of creating this fantasy dream, like, oh, I can lucid dream. Let's have a sex dream. Let's live out a fantasy. Let's fly. Let's whatever. You become so desirous of that you will wake yourself up or you will slip back into unconscious dreaming. So it's very hard. People who lucid dream know that the first thing is learning to maintain and lengthen those moments in which you're fully aware that it's a dream. And once you maintain and lengthen it, what tends to happen is the dream contents dissolve. The dream just kind of starts to dissolve and you end up in this pure meditative void-like space, which is the goal of meditation, right?
Yeah.
Silence, emptiness in this space. And from there, you're like, well, what do I do? Just learn to maintain it, learn to stay awake. And so this trains your ability to also wake up when you're being pulled around by grasping and aversion, fear or desire in your waking life. Let's say, you want to have an argument with someone, they want to have an argument with you, and you get pulled into it. And you're not fully awake in that moment, And so this is about waking up to every moment, whether we're asleep or whether we're awake. And it's the story that's told in The Matrix. Neo wakes up to the Matrix. He becomes lucid in the Matrix. Initially, he can control it, but in the end, there's this alchemy, there's this transformation of the actual reality that's been built by the Matrix there for the liberation of everyone. And so when I'm going to move to endogenous DMT now.
Great.
What kind of, so Salinca pensis, the plant that I've extracted from South Africa, that's my closest ally in lucid dreaming and my favorite lucid dreaming plant for other people too, it somehow stimulates the production of endogenous DMT. There's not a lot of research on this plant. It's traditional usage, but I hope to see more of that coming. It's certainly something that people are learning about. I know that when I was first initiated with it in 2009, I'd first heard about it in 2007, and this whole series of synchronicities occurred where I got put in touch with dream diviners from South Africa, and I ended up speaking to this person who's written their only PhD that's ever been written on this plant, ended up my friend, and this is back on MySpace.
Yes.
But yeah, I hadn't joined Facebook yet. And so the realms collaborated pretty much to reconnect me with this plant, or to connect me. I say reconnect because I think maybe past life, right? So to connect me with this plant and this unfolding, which is surprising to me, but it happened. And so these... it works through, what I do know is that it works through the serotonergic pathway. It may not be suitable for people to take who are taking certain antidepressants or mood stabilizers that work through the serotonergic pathway. I don't know for sure. So I would say if that's you and you're listening and you really want to try this tincture, to have, to observe, or to be monitored by a practitioner who can monitor that kind of thing. But basically, let's talk about what is endogenous DMT. So people know, I was recently really inspired by this research piece I found that said that, and it was done in 2014, and I haven't seen much research since then, like it hasn't been furthered. And I would hope that it is at some point, but it surfaced, I saw it on a TikTok. And basically, people with autism have elevated urine levels of bufotenine. And bufotenine is an endogenous DMT that is formed by our bodies. And I was like, wow, because so the endogenous DMT and also DMT from external sources, which I'll define in a moment, is related to having psychic and spiritual experiences or having lucid dreaming or precognitive experiences. And this is one of my favorite topics. And so the word bufotenine, you'll recognize bufo, you might recognize the bufo toad. People know about DMT in terms of shamans who are extracting it from the bufo toad, or as it being one half of ayahuasca. So for those that don't know, ayahuasca is a combination of two plants. One is the Mysteriopsis carpi vine, and the other is another plant. There can be multiple sources. Like in Australia, they're making Ozihuasca and from acacia trees. But that second plant brings the DMT component. And so the first plant brings an MAO-A component, and MAO is a gene and therefore an enzyme in our body. And it stands for monoamine oxidase. And MAO-A will inhibit the breakdown of DMT in the body. So what it can do is lengthen the experience of DMT, because DMT is metabolized very quickly in the human body, even though our brains produce it naturally in the pineal gland. And it's also said to be released by every species at death. Perhaps this is part of the death spiritual experience, or definitely it's part of the spiritual experience at death. But we do have access to these experiences in life as well. And so it's only with the presence of the MAO that these experiences, the breakdown or the neutralization of DMT in the human body can be lengthened, and then we have an experience. So, for example, if you were to smoke DMT pure, you might have a 5-minute experience. And for a lot of people, that's a complete death experience. This can be terrifying.
Yeah.
No harm done to the body, but very much soul shaking. And, that's why people seek it. Then if in the form of ayahuasca, the journey can last for, say, 5 hours. And that's due to the presence of the other plant, the MAO inhibitor, the carpi vine. So these are far more intense experiences than people are having with, endogenous DMT. But I'll just give you some info from this research. And that is that, so the paper is titled Urine Bufotenine Levels Were Significantly Higher in Autism Spectrum Subjects, and patients with schizophrenia had even higher levels compared with the control group. So the levels that they had was, we'll start with the schizophrenia group because they had the highest levels. They had 4.39 micrograms per liter. And the autism, this was the highest levels. The autism spectrum group had highest levels of 3.3 micrograms, right? So it's 4.39 for schizophrenia, 3.3 for the autism. And the control group levels kind of maxed out at 1.5 micrograms per liter. So there seems to be...
That's incredibly significant numbers.
Right. So from my perspective, and we all know with the crossover of mental health and spiritual emergence experiences that sometimes they're hard to differentiate I really suspect as well that people with bipolar weren't part of this study, but they also would have periodically elevated levels. And, they also found elevated levels in people with depression in another study.
Yeah.
I don't know those actual levels, but they were a little bit lower, like between the autism, the 3.3 and the 1.5. So there is also a heightened physical sensory sensitivity that goes on that is co-present with elevated levels of endogenous DMT in the body. Hypersensitive, hearing a little extra, seeing energy, definitely sensitive to touch and music and sound. And so, like, if you've ever had any of these journeys induced by plants, you'll know that you're extremely sensitive. And the shamans also use plants and music and rhythms to soothe and heal and hold you and progress you along your journey. So I'm not really trying to talk about entheogens. I'm just using it because I know that that's, for a lot of people, that's how they would know about DMT and understand these experiences or have had these experiences. But so I know, as someone who's a little neurospicy, who has a lot of cosmic and psychic experiences, I've never had my sanity questioned, but I have always known that there is some kind of spiritual factor going on with people who are on the autism spectrum. And, depending on how high functioning someone is, or whether or not they're low IQ or a high IQ or in the middle. I got really lucky. I have high IQ, I'm high functioning, but I'm super physically sensitive. Like, it's difficult for me to go to a restaurant and I can't just order anything off the menu, or I can't just use any product on my body, or have, someone can't be cooking mushrooms in my house or using bleach to mop the floor. I'll get sick. So, it's not all great. But I do feel glad and lucky to be me. And this was fascinating for me because I think that it also speaks to this kind of movement in neurodivergence, where there are a lot of people saying, there's not something wrong with us. We're here and we're super sensitive because we're more spiritually awake sometimes or somehow. And, we are so sensitive to this kind of level of brutality and violence in human society. And that's a massive trauma for us. And so I think this speaks to what I'm saying about the species in crisis and what we've been gaslit into accepting as being normal and something that we're stuck with as well. That I would like to say, well, hopefully we can become more lucid and evolve further through this. Like, nothing stays the same. In the history of the universe, nothing stays the same. The great statement of meditators is, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
So I think these are some important pieces. I hope to see more. I don't know. I can't really speak much more about this research because there hasn't been more done. But we have an MAOA gene in our body which creates the enzyme monoamine oxidase, right? And people can have polymorphisms in the MAOA gene or in the MAOB gene. And I know that I have one of them. And so for me, this was like an aha moment seeing this research of basically going, oh, that's why I have, every now and then, I have a trickle of DMT from my pineal gland, and I have a lengthened kind of cosmic experience compared to most humans, because I have a variant of that gene. It's not breaking down the DMT as quickly in my body. So I'm just a little more cosmic. I'm a little more ayahuasca.
I'm a little more ayahuasca.
Right. And apparently so are a lot of people on the autism spectrum. So I thought that was super interesting. And so this dream diviner, Saline capensis, the plant, also can give us perhaps extra stimulation of DMT from the pineal gland. But what's really interesting about it is it tends to only give us altered states during our sleep and dreaming.
Well, interesting.
But for some people, and traditionally in the Xhosa tribe, these are the people that would be identified as a dream diviner and taken from initiation. Like when they're about 13, they'll be taken to the dream diviner and be like, my child has all these psychic dreams, or my child is a dreamer. Can we, there's a whole initiation process. And interestingly, it involves minerals from clay, white clay coming on with all the silica. And I was talking about minerals connecting us with alchemical processes in the mineral kingdom. And that's another topic I could talk about. But for some people, the first time they ingest Silene capensis, about 20 minutes after you have it, you'll see like white, it literally looks like white stars in front of you, like white wormholes opening up in the space in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's not like seeing stars when you're about to faint. I've experienced that too. It's not like that, but I would say it might look a little like that, but there's no sensation of low blood pressure or I'm about to faint.
Really?
That goes with it. And from that, it's traditionally called white ways or white paths, because it opens you up to these portals, to these dimensions. But often people will only see that the first time during their first initiation, and then you don't see it again, but you can always work with it and it will help you call in ancestors or clear dreams or just to sustain your lucidity in your dream state. And it's also a really great, and I think this is part of it, working through the serotonergic pathway. It's a fantastic antidepressant. Like for me, it's like a brain corrector. And you only take it for a month. So I'm only selling very small bottles of it. Each bottle is like 1 lunar cycle's worth. The dosages for people can really vary. So at the higher dosage, it's a lunar cycle. If you only need a lower dosage, you might get 2 lunar cycles worth out of it. But you should really take it only for 1 lunar cycle. So say 28, 29 days, or from full moon to full moon. And then wait, give it a pause. The alkaloids take time to build up in your system as well. So it may not work the first week. You can't just have a dose and then have it work that night when you sleep. You take it on an empty stomach in the morning and you can take a second dose at night. It's best on an empty stomach. And it might take up to 5 days to start having an effect. I'm pretty sensitive to it and low doses work for me. I start to really feel it by the 3rd day. And yeah, like I said, the best antidepressant I've ever had as well, because it just brings this really high frequency, clear diamond mind kind of feeling for me. But I do know it doesn't affect everybody in its fullest extent. And it also is a very delicate, this plant is so beautiful. It's a root. The root is what we harvest, but the plant is a night flower. It's a little white flower, about 1.5 inches diameter, and it only opens at night, right?
Oh.
So it's a dreaming plant. It's a white dreaming plant. And you see the white stars. This is very much about pure consciousness and clarity. And this flower is sticky when it opens, and it smells like jasmine, banana, clove kind of dessert. It's very subtle, though it's not as overpowering as jasmine. And it has 10 petals that are arranged in 5 pairs of 2. And when you cut the root, the cross-section of the root, you can see the image of like 10 petals almost. It's not always formed perfectly. I did do some photography. They're on my website and they're on my social media. And I talked about how I love this because it also string theory, the theory, one of the best theories we have at this point for the whole structure of the multiverse is that there are 10 dimensions. And so you can look up, on YouTube what the 10 dimensions are, but we know that we're living in the 4th dimension. We are 3D plus time. Time is the 4th dimension. People are talking about trying to evolve to 5D, which is where you become aware of multiple timelines. 6D would be more so where you can navigate between multiple timelines. So I think this is something that lucid dreamers can do. Describing 7, 8, and 9 is really, really head mashing. It's like mush, but I'll leave that up to you to go look up and check it out. So I just love the way that all these things come together, and this plant really contains that doctrine of signatures within how it looks, and it also in the family of scent. You know that jasmine is considered a narcotic in terms of its scent.
Oh, interesting. I've never heard that.
Right. So if you look at essential oils and perfumery, narcotic is a category of scent.
That's interesting.
You have narcotics, you know. And it is, it's this kind of heady, delicious nut, like just from the night, you know, to draw you in, but then also help you with incredible clarity.
I love that. I can't wait to try that tincture. It sounds incredible, and the plant sounds beautiful. It's always amazing to me how much we can learn from nature and from these traditional wisdoms that have been passed down.
Can I say one more thing about the Dream Diviner?
Yes, please.
It's out there en masse. And that is that I offer to do consults with people that are lucid dreamers that want to develop their own lucid dreaming practice. I don't offer it from any of the one specific traditions that I've delved into, because I don't really belong fully to any of those traditions indigenously. But I like to help people develop their own lucid dreaming practice and perhaps introduce them to those traditions, which they may then want to go join if that's their path. But when it comes to Selene capensis, there's this huge, beautiful mythology around how a dream diviner is identified. And it's not just, do you have lucid dreams and is this plant your ally, and can you help people with dreaming? You know, before clinic days, I would have at least 3 dreams about my patients that day coming up, you know. And now my dreams are about either, you know, other ways in which I'm, I don't know, helping somehow, trying to help, or even things in my life or even things in the world. Like I've dreamed about future earth changes with climate and things like that. So there is a specific dream that one will dream if Selene capensis is indicating them as a dream diviner. And I'm not going to tell you what this dream is, because then people can fake it that they've had it, or they will maybe have it because they're thinking about it. What I will say is this: if you take it and you have a dream that you're underwater, send me an email about it. If it's the dream, I'll let you know and we'll go from there.
That's amazing. I love it.
Keep it to like 500 words or less, because I don't fix figures in my email. I can't start from that point. That's plenty.
Yeah. No, it sounds like an incredible product and plant, and it seems like it's a beautiful teacher and door for a lot of people. I know that, you know, just in what you're saying about people on the spectrum and some of the different ways in which we're able to start identifying with connecting to different worlds and different realms and different energies. I know that my son Remy has been a tremendous teacher for me in that, because he is very disabled and nonverbal and unable to communicate in so many ways. And he just so beautifully teaches me how little I know about this world. And so I'm forever grateful for that. And I would be very curious to see what the DMT output of children on with seizure disorders would be also, because I believe that those kiddos have very, very unique brains and experience a lot more of the world than we actually realize.
Yeah, I think it's anyone with hyperempathy. And hyperempathy is this word coming out of the psychiatry world. I think somehow it's a bit of a cop-out for just basically saying psychic or like multi-sensorily aware perception that can process multi-sensory information. So hyperempathy, you know, and this is people who are so sensitive, people who are bleeding hearts because we can't handle the brutalities that we're taught is just how people are. You're just stuck with it, you know. But I think we're here and we're being born in growing numbers, and becoming vocal about it, to pressure to steer the direction of humanity. Like, we're going to evolve. Change is inevitable. Which way are we going? We're going to become bigger assholes, or are we going to actually learn from some of our mistakes and be better at love and be better at being a member of this incredible, beautiful planetary paradise that we are just one part of?
I love that. I think that's a perfect place to end. I think you did, again, just such a beautiful job articulating all of this. And I'm so grateful for your wisdom and your time. And I can't wait to listen to this episode. Again, I already took a ton of notes, and I'm looking forward to doing a follow-up with you and learning more from you. It was really such a pleasure and such an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you so much for having me on here. And let's do part 2 soon. And, can I mention also, my website?
Yeah.
So it's herbology.com. Please come and follow me on Instagram or Facebook or even TikTok. I haven't really built that, but you can help me. But I also have a YouTube channel, which I haven't built. And I've uploaded onto there 2 free meditations. One is for self-care and healing and replenishing your energy body. It's just breathing and light work and soundscape. And the other one is a visualization. It's 7 minutes. And I hope that a lot of people can do it. And even if you don't like mine, to do something like this, where we're visualizing the whole species evolving to a more peaceful capacity. And we're visualizing our leaders and everyone evolving into expressing and living a more peaceful capacity. That we know we have the technology. We know that people don't need to live in poverty or to be starving anymore. We know that we have the abundance on the planet to be able to live that way. It's literally a problem of distribution and control.
Yeah. And it would take psychopaths to distribute the wealth, be it food or resources, in the way that we are right now. So
yeah, so that's Herbology on YouTube. There's really not very many followers right now, but hopefully you guys can help me with that.
Yeah, well, and you do a great job with your social media. I always love checking in and seeing what you have to say and what you're putting out there, especially the astrology stuff. I will have to get into that also on the next one. Well, we're going to do another one. But all right, well, thank you again. Everybody check the links in the bio. I'll make sure that the meditations and the website are there so that you guys can check it out and try the products and let us know what you think. Again, Phiona is such a heart-centered doctor who's really, I think it's very clear to anybody who's listened this far, how passionate she is about helping others and bringing really high-quality products to help support our growth as a society and as individuals. So it's really beautiful. And thank you again.
Take care, everybody. May you awaken in the dream.
Thank you for listening to the Radical Remedy Podcast. The Radical Remedy Podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor/patient relationship is formed. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.